It seems very easy to preach on Mother's Day. It's a wonderful day to celebrate, to reflect, to give thanks for our mothers. And as I said, it's easy to preach on Mother's Day because the example of our mothers is one of consistent, unconditional love, endurance, faithfulness, dedication, compassion, kindness, long-suffering, especially my mother. These are the images that are appropriate and so easily accessible for us in our culture today as children of such wonderful mothers. And I'd ask you to think about this example of motherhood and this model of such virtue and realize that this is the exact kind of thing that Jesus kept begging us to understand about God our Father. That the virtue that we so correctly understand lies in our mothers, Jesus wanted us to see in God our Father. And the reason this is so important for us today is because we often hear messages that paint God in a very different light. God is so frequently portrayed to us by all kinds of different people as anything but the good, patient, loving, kind, compassionate parent. Rather, we'll hear images of impatience, cruelty, exacting, demanding standards, capriciousness, punishment, harshness, lack of patience, etc. And the list goes on. Sometimes the image of God that we have been given is positively monstrous. In fact, it wasn't that long ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was, and I'm not making this up, there was a Christian preacher just a little ways that way, standing in the middle of the little town of Elon, and he was there and he was preaching to anybody who was willing to listen, and some of our students got in a conversation with him, and this guy honestly said, God hates most people. He believed that. Somewhere he got that message, and he thought it was a good idea to stand in the middle of a college town and tell people God hates a lot of people. But yet Jesus, over and over, especially in the Gospel of John, over and over has tried to tell us the opposite, that God is a loving, gentle, kind, patient, long-suffering, compassionate Father. And Jesus then refers to himself as a shepherd. John chapter 10 is this beautiful chapter about the good shepherd. And Jesus tries to explain his ministry as a shepherd. And so many instances and variables and examples, and it makes no sense to us because we don't live in a culture with a lot of sheep, right? You could go to New Zealand, there's sheep there. And so the idea of a metaphor of shepherds don't make a lot of sense to us. So I was praying about this week, and here's the best example I can give to you. Who here has, or has in the past had, a beloved dog, family pet? Okay. Did your dog love you with great slobbery affection? Yes. And did you cuddle and scratch and love and play with your beloved dog? Yes. That's the closest cultural example that we can get to in regards to the relationship that a shepherd would have had with the sheep. The shepherd would have had a few dozen or a few hundred sheep. And the shepherd would have known each sheep individually. Often he would have named each sheep. The sheep would have been like a beloved pet, a member of his own family. And in the ways that many people cuddle with their dog at night in the bed, the shepherd would gather the sheep at night and sleep in the midst of the sheep. Their wool would keep him warm, and if they got agitated, it would wake him up, and he would go and protect them from the wolf. He knew them by name, and they knew his voice. And the only metaphor or analogy we have access to is that beloved relationship that so many have with the family pet, with their beloved dog. But multiply that by 100 or 200 or 300. Now you know the relationship that a shepherd would have had with his sheep. That's the image that Jesus wants us to think about in regards to him. And yet again, I want to say to us, this is a beautiful, hopeful image. This is why Christians for 2,000 years have been running around the world talking about good news. Because God is not a cruel, condemning and capricious tyrant. No, God is a loving Father. God is a good shepherd. And now, so when we allow our imagination to be transformed and see who God truly is, or who Jesus keeps begging us to see him as, we can ask the question, so who is in the flock? And maybe who's not in the flock? That could be a scary question, because it seems to me the same people who want to distort the image of God into a tyrant often will savor the opportunity and talk about who's not in the flock. Just notice the irony. Whenever anybody wants to talk about condemnation or judgmentalism or a cruel God who likes to send people to hell, they're never in the group going to hell. Did you notice that? Something inconsistent there. In the book of Revelation, chapter 7, which is where our second reading came from, the entire chapter is this incredible vision of the population of heaven. Who's there? The beginning of the book, chapter 7, talks about the Israelites and all of the tribes of Israel and the numbers that are used to describe the tribes of Israel, not literal numbers. It begins with 144,000, but rather 12,000 from each tribe. 12 is the perfect amount of people. 1,000 is a representative number of infinity, an uncountable number. So the author of the book of Revelation is saying the fullness of the people of Israel will be in heaven. And then, after going through the 12 tribes of Israel, then we get to the reading we learned today, and that is the Gentiles, the non-Jews, the non-Israelites. And the number is so big, John writes, the author of Revelation writes, that number cannot be counted. How many Catholics are there in the world? About 1.2, 1.4 billion. It's a lot, but we can count them. How many Christians are in the world? About 2.2 billion. It's a lot, but we can count them. So if the number is so big that it cannot be counted, that says something, doesn't it? You see where the scriptures are going with this? Because if Jesus is a good shepherd, and the good shepherd is one with the Father, and the Father is the Father of all, then doesn't it stand to reason that we can hope that all are in the flock? Yes, it's up and down. You see, I have no tolerance for those preachers or teachers or Christians who twist Jesus' image of God, the loving Father, and himself as the good shepherd. Jesus never goes around and says, I'm a good shepherd, but I'm kicking some people out of the flock. In fact, the exact opposite, right? He's the crazy shepherd who leaves the 99 and goes looking for the lost one. So why in the world would we narrate the flock of Christ differently? And this is what gives me such hope. This is why I love being a Christian. This is why I love Jesus and I love God. I am convinced this is who God really is. I'm also convinced when people talk about God and it sounds different than Jesus' version of the Father, they're really talking about themselves and not God. And I gotta tell you, my joy is just even greater, compounded this morning because we have a new pope. And I am beyond flabbergasted that it's an American. I thought we'd never have an American pope in my life. But the thing that fills me with the greatest joy, I had tears running down my eyes when I was at lunch with a student when he was announced and when he came out and spoke. So I went back to my office and I watched the video of his opening remarks. And I had tears rolling down my cheeks because of what he said. He said he wanted the church to continue to build bridges, to listen, to dialogue, and he referenced the square of St. Peter's, which, if you've never seen it, go on the internet, take a picture, and it's deliberately, the arms of St. Peter's Square look like a giant hug. And that was on purpose. When Michelangelo designed that square, it's supposed to be the arms of St. Peter embracing the whole world. That's exactly the symbolism there. And so, Pope Leo, Bob from Chicago, said he wants the church to be just like St. Peter's Square, embracing the whole world. This fills me with such joy because that's exactly what a good father and a good shepherd does.